limited? If you're looking for a new way to listen, it's time for a fresh start. Introducing the Live the Dream Media app, your premier destination and a new level up for digital radio. Over the last 2 years, we've found new ways to ensure your digital radio experience is the best it can possibly be. From live podcasts that spark new perspectives to a 24/7 soundtrack of live music, and even our built-in merch store, we've built a platform that is convenient, high quality, and simple to navigate. But we're only just getting started. Catch all of our shows weekly and join the Live the Dream Media family today and help us change the airwaves forever. Download it for free on the App Store or Play Store today. Live the dream. The dream starts now.
Your favorite radio just got bigger, bolder, and better connected. Live the Dream Media is revolutionizing how you stay tuned in. With our explosive growth in online radio and our brand new mobile app, your entertainment goes wherever you do. Stream your favorite shows, discover new hits, and connect with audiences across the digital landscape, all at your fingertips. Advertisers don't miss out. Join our expanding digital network and reach engaged listeners across platforms. Download the Live the Dream Media app today and experience.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sobriety, Spirituality, and Sales. We're at episode 18. Time is flying. It's a beautiful morning. We're here with my co-host, Mike Bader.
Good morning.
State Farm Agent, First and River. And
give us a shout.
Give him a shout.
Yeah.
And ironically, our guest today, Mike Cylkowski, is one of Mike's clients.
He's a client. We just found out. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Mike
great.
only does
thank
business
you.
with other Mikes. So if you own a business and your name's Mike out there, reach out to him. So welcome to the show, guys. Show is sponsored by Michael Bader, State Farm Agency, First and River. Give him a shout. Mike, what's your phone number?
520-878-0098.
And we'll run the website halfway through the show. Or excuse me, the way to contact you is, I believe it's an email on your commercial there.
Yeah, michael@baderagency.com.
Fantastic. And if you're a business owner, guys, and you're watching the show and you know alcohol is running your life and you want to find out who you are without it, reach out to me, reach out to my website at mikecurrycoaching.com. And let's just get into it. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you.
Wonderful to have you here. I think it was very serendipitous in how we met.
Yeah.
We met at another podcaster's barbecue.
It was
Car giveaway?
Yeah, it was his event to give away. He does a quarterly thing where he
Yeah.
gives a prize away or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And great vibe, great energy at the event. We started chatting, your long-term sobriety, and you're new to Tucson within the last 4 to 5 years.
Yep.
Grew up in Minnesota.
Grew up in Minnesota.
Okay. And you, the bio that you gave me, you had 1,000-person real estate team. Is that correct?
I had started buying Keller Williams franchises in 03, and by 06, 07, I had 6 of them.
Wow.
And we had over 1,000 agents across the 6 locations. Yeah.
So I think that speaks for itself. Obviously, you did very well in business, but let's just back up a bit. Like, what was life growing up for you? You're 14 years sober. We kind of also stated that in your bio, or you did, excuse me. So I'd like to kind of start from the beginning. What led you to where you were, the decision to get sober, and how was it growing up for you, and the whole, whatever you want to share?
You grow up in whatever you grow up in, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize we were poor until I went in the service, to be honest. And we moved a lot, and I think we moved a lot because Dad didn't like to pay his bills, right? So we were on the run. By the time I graduated high school, we were in a trailer park. And I was, on paper, I had all the potential, right? I was a straight-A student, and I had academic offers and athletic offers and all of that. And for a long time, I would not have told anybody that I was terrified to go to college. All my buddies were going to college. And so one day I get fired from this local restaurant, and Next day I enlisted in the service, and I remember I came home, and that was one of the first times where it kind of hit me, where my mom looked at me, and I said, hey, I enlisted. And she was like, it was just had the look on her face was like, I'm happy to see you go, kind of thing. And so I, went in the Army and went in with a flannel shirt and a pair of jeans, and 4 years later I came out with a ratty flannel shirt and a holey pair of jeans, and I was married for the first time. Did some fun things. I was a Polish linguist, and I'm just a really good test taker. I don't learn anything, but I'm a good test taker. So I had gotten all the awards, Commandant's Awards, and all these different things along the way. And just to sum up my military experience, I was in Monterey, California, going through language school, and then I don't show up for graduation when I'm supposed to get the top award for the classes or whatever. And I get shipped off to Texas, my next duty assignment, and I show up, and the first sergeant pulls me aside, and I'm in her office for like 4 hours, right? Because she says, I've heard about you, right? And it was all due to my drinking, and I was charming, and I remember walking out of there going, I think I might be G.I. Joe. Like, I was just so full of it, right? And so then by the time I got shipped to Berlin, I get off the plane, and who meets me there? The commandant meets me there at the airport. And he's like, we've heard about you. But I never got officially in trouble. I was just kind of always on the outskirts of trouble. And that didn't happen until I got back to Minnesota. And then it was fights, and then it was jail times, and then it was DUIs, and, all the things started happening. And
Were you out at that time?
I was out of the service.
Okay.
And I had somehow managed to be honorably discharged. But by the time I was 25, I had a couple of bags of clothes and a 10-speed, and I was couch surfing at best. And I remember thinking one night, like, if I wake up tomorrow, I will. That's one of the first prayers I ever said. I said, I'll do whatever it takes to get sober. And then I woke up the next day, and I was like physically able to really move much. And so it took another couple of days. But anyways, I reached out. Some friends of mine said, go to this meeting. So I go to a meeting. And it was called Outright Mental Defectives was the name of the group that I went to. And I immediately, the obsession to drink went away. And I was a guy that had tried to not drink for a long time. And I could never put more than, like, literally a day together. And it went away, and somehow, like, I took credit for that. Like, my own actions got me to this spot. And, it's interesting when I look back on my history, because there's, like, the original Mike, and then there's Mike 2.0, and the 2.0 phase became very much, I now have to prove to the world I'm important. And so I got really lost in business stuff. And that's when I originally started in mortgage, and then I started a mortgage company, and then that graduated into the real estate offices, and then we had all the other ancillary businesses around all of that, and weathered the whole great financial crisis, and blah, blah, blah. And there I was, roughly 14 years sober, and somehow the thought of picking up a drink crossed my mind, and I did, and all hell broke loose. I mean, I don't even know how long I drank, maybe 6 months. But now I had stuff to lose, and it was chaotic. Scandalous. Staff was involved. Like, it just was a mess. And I'm in front of Your Honor. And a friend of mine, a gal I had actually dated, she was an attorney. She had recommended to go to this place called The Retreat, which was technically a bed and breakfast. And it was a place where they brought in meetings all day long. So it was a safe place to go. And I was there for 30 days, and they fed us, and I knew everybody, and it was really embarrassing, and I was full of remorse, but that's when things really shifted for me, because that 14 years of business stuff, and I built up all those stuff, and had the houses and the cars and the marriages and divorces, and I was doing, all of that, constantly trying to get the outer picture to look a certain way in order to be okay. And there I was, and then I ran into a dude that, frankly, knew me better than I knew me. And he saw right through all of those stuff. And he cut to the chase, and that things shifted very quickly and pretty radically inside, where to the point where all of a sudden all the business stuff didn't matter. Like, all my priorities changed. And And I was like, I've been living life backwards. I don't know how else to describe it.
So real quick, if you want to just back up for the audience and just, I'm curious too, what was it in your life that made you take the plunge back into drinking? I mean, what was it? Just total unhappiness with the material things that you had. Nothing was enough. I mean, what did that look like for you?
In hindsight, I think it was. I was frantically, because I wanted to prove to the world I was okay and that I was important. So the business stuff, and I had seemed to reach a measure of success with some of that. And then it was, all right, now I got to get the right gal. And I felt like I'd maybe had done some of that. And I had weathered, and the financial crisis was a pretty good focuser, because I just had to, like at one time, in 2007, I had signed a bunch of new leases. And to the extent my overhead had gone up 7 figures going into 2008. Well, then all hell broke loose in the economy, especially real estate and everything else. And so I managed to weather all of that. And on paper, we basically broke even for a couple of years. I didn't make any money, but the companies managed to stay afloat. And then when I got through all of that, I think I took a breath and was like, now what? Now I'm still stuck with me.
So you think, in other words, you may have had a purpose for those 2 years. It was driving you, it was sustaining you, and then
it was distracting me, literally, and to the point. And then all of a sudden, it was all me, and I'm like, now I'm really uncomfortable. And I remember, and I was in the Twin Cities, and I had an office up in Brainerd, which was about 150 miles away, and I was spending some time up there, and the thought crossed my mind. I'm like, you know what? Nobody's going to know. Here I am. I was young, right? Blah, blah, blah. And I started off with, it wasn't like I put my toe in the water. Like I drank a bottle of Rumplemans the first night I drank, like 100 proof alcohol, right? Which somebody else had to point out to me. They're like, you didn't put your toe in the water. I was like, oh, a good point.
Rumplemans.
0 to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and then I remember thinking, I'm not doing what I did before. Like that stuff didn't work, and which I had never applied any of the spirituality, or I had never done it. Truthfully, I just kind of masqueraded when I would go to meetings, or I thought if I looked a certain way, then I'm going to be okay. And it was nothing had it really rearranged. And then I was really lost, and that's when I ran into that guy. And he was funny. And, it's interesting when I look back on it, because he was, he had been sober like 35 years. And I just remember sitting across the table from him going, man, whoever you're describing, I believe you from 35 years ago, but that's not the dude that's sitting in front of me. Like, something happened to you. Like, what happened? And he wasn't that his stuff or any of that, but he was literally just comfortable in his own skin. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, whatever you're doing, that's attractive. And then it became really like, everything's gonna shift. And I remember asking him, is it gonna get better? And he just refused to tell me it was gonna get better. And he finally said, look, it'll get different. He's like, no, I'll claim it's better. He's like, but it's gonna get different.
I like that.
And no shit, excuse me.
You're good.
It got different. Like when I say things flip-flopped, like they flip-flopped. Like all of a sudden, all the things that I was like, man, none of this stuff matters. Like, what am I doing? You know, like it's really about trying to be of service to others and, get grounded in the power greater than myself. And I got to rely on God and all of those things. And then fast forward, here I'm married 10 years, and then we get to Arizona. And we had started to sell everything off and had done well. Financially, and we get here, and then that's been the last major upheaval. It's been really fascinating, because then I got asked for a divorce almost as soon as we got here, and I didn't know anybody, and I was just wallowing, and the picture just did not look the way that I thought it was supposed to look,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of prayer. And it pretty quickly it came on like, you're the one that's creating your own suffering, dude, because you're the one that's attached to this picture, and you're fighting really hard to you don't want to let go. And I remember having those daily struggles where I was like, you got to let this go. You got to let all of it go. And you got to love everyone and just put one foot in front of the other. And I didn't know anybody. And then I was very fortunate to end up, I had a buddy of mine that randomly called me And he had started at this company called Tegna, and I was like, I don't know what a Tegna is. And Tegna owns a bunch of TV stations around the country. And he said, I thought of you. And he's like, I think you'd like this. He's like, do you want to work? And I was like, yeah, I got to do something. I got to get out of the house. So I went and door knocked on the local TV station here, and then he's turned out to be one of the just salt of the earth dudes, right? And I walked in and I go, here's the deal. I'm a really good sales guy. I'm really honest. I'll work hard. I'm not going to work 60 hours a week anymore. Blah, 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 right? I go, if you need a guy, I'm your guy. And he went, okay, let's do it, right? So I've been in media sales now for the last, coming up on 3 years.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's been fascinating. Life's a journey, man.
Absolutely. Mike's on that journey. We're all on that journey, really. But Mike's on a spiritual path. He kind of described to you what's going on in his life over the last 12 months. And, I'm just interested to know, and Mike maybe as well, from your perspective, did you grow up around a certain religion? Did you have any animosity towards religion? Was that a big deal for you or blockage for you to move into the spiritual path, essentially?
Yeah, I can tell you precisely where I formed my basis on any sort of thing to do with religion or spiritual, any of that. And my dad sold insurance.
Okay.
And my dad was a really good sales guy. And my dad was a really interesting dude. He might have been a sociopath. He had no remorse. He just did whatever he wanted to do. And yet he never raised his voice. We always had a roof over our head. We ate. Right, and then Dad was going to be at the bar playing cards with his buddies, and those are my earliest memories. 5 years old, if I wanted to find Dad, he'd be down at the local pub, right, and down in the basement.
And in Minnesota, that's not hard to find. They're on every corner.
They're everywhere, and so I would traverse to go find Dad, and he'd throw me a quarter so I could play a pinball and eat a Snickers bar or something, whatever. While he played cards, right, and. He had early on gotten in with Blue Cross Blue Shield and had done some of the county stuff, so he had some decent residuals coming in. Mm-hmm. So he just, whenever he got his check, he'd go down and play cards. And he occasionally would take me with him, and we were up in northern Minnesota, and I was probably 8, and we would stop and get a peanut butter parfait at Dairy Queen. That was a big treat, right? And I'm in the car, and he was like, "Hang on, I gotta go in." And he when we had this old 78 Newport Catalina, I don't know, it slept 8 car, right? And so I'm sitting in the car, and he comes out, and he slams the door, and he like I said, he didn't show a lot of emotion, and he would always light up a cigarette, and he looked at me, and he looked back, and he went, "Those Catholics are all a bunch of effing hypocrites." And then he put the car, and we took off. And I don't know what a Catholic is. I don't know what a hypocrite is. I just know that it wasn't good.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And I think that literally formed the basis for anything to do with any sort of religious overtones or spirituality, all of it. And so I avoided it wholeheartedly. It just freaked me out.
Because Dad was the authority figure. He kind of said,
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not going there, dude. Right. And okay. And we didn't go to church. We didn't do any of that kind of stuff. Grandma would take me occasionally, and I was super uncomfortable. The pastor, I think she went to a Lutheran church, and once in a while I'd sit in the back, and I was like, God, this is just uncomfortable, man. So, and it wasn't, and then even my first foray in sobriety, I just bristled at that word God. And I would avoid that, and I just would not go anywhere near it. And then fast forward, this 4 years that I've been in Arizona, when he talks about where your real reliance is, that's what I kept bumping up against. I'm like, man, I am relying on me and how I see the world, and I am not relying on God in this moment. And I had a different perspective altogether, and I've been praying, and I'm very much a God guy, but that was a big deal in my life the last 4 years to go, yeah, you got to let go of all of it, dude. You haven't, my old sponsor would say, anything that doesn't get brought into the God circle is going to get exposed eventually, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, shit, here I am. I'm clinging on to some things, man, and I'm not just willing to let go. I don't know what's going to happen. And it's going to require a leap of faith constantly, right? And I would report that things are pretty good today. I'm pretty comfortable. But boy, there was probably about 6 months where I suffered mightily.
Yeah.
Mightily. By my own doing, and aware of it. which sucks because now you're the one doing it to yourself.
Yeah.
And still wanting to put a Facebook post up there to say I was the dude that was wronged. You know what I mean? Like, still wanting to do that because I'm like, yep. And what is that going to do?
Justification and
Yeah.
rationalization.
Yeah, what's that going to do? So I want to be free.
I think sometimes it's just hard to tell when you're in self sometimes because you're so, for me anyways, because I get my blinders on and, my fiance will tell me all the time, we're having a little spat or whatever, and she's like, you don't see this or you don't see that. And I'm like, you're right.
I know.
I don't,
Yeah.
And so I think that what I have realized over the years and, what we've discussed, and we just finished reading the book together. And, I've been to 1 million book studies. And it literally 24 hours at a time, very simple.
Yeah.
My sponsor would say, this process is what is it? It's simple. It's not easy. It's really simple. And so when I can focus on just today and don't have to look down the road, my life is a lot better. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest hang up, at least that I had, was the spirituality of it all. And, before Jack's passing, I thought, I'm good. I've got all this stuff. I'm checking all the boxes. The kids are taken care of. I've got the house. I've got the business. You think you're doing good, but there's that underlying unhappiness that you kind of tuck away. And then it took something, his passing to just, you're looking in the mirror and you're like, what now? What's this all about? What's my purpose? What am I to do with myself at this point in time? And that's been the biggest eye opener for me, is just the spirituality, man. I think I told you that the other day. You're like, what's the difference between me and your counselor? Well, the big part is just how this process has opened my eyes spiritually, knowing that there's so much more out there. There's so much more after this, and being able to tap into that, just being at a place where you're good with yourself. You don't care about all the stuff. You don't care what people think. You're good, and you're talking to your higher power. You're talking to your spirit guides, whatever you choose to believe in. But that's always been, because I grew up Catholic, and we went to church every week. And I was like, it's just so repetitive, and nothing wrong, nothing against it. I mean, it brings a lot of people peace. It just wasn't for me. And I didn't see myself, in fact, I told my parents, when I'm on my own, this is it. I'm not going to continue this. And then during my first marriage, her folks were pretty religious, and, I saw a different side of it, but, again, nothing really stuck.
I think for me, not realizing that church is where sinners go, and judging situations, judging people, in my head as a kid, well, that doesn't seem very Christian or Catholic or religious or whatever. But I have this complex about being perfect. Of course, nobody's perfect, but that prevented me from starting so many different things. But I'd also look at other people and judge them on my inadequacies, right? Yeah. And so I think that, looking back too on my experience, it's like, it wasn't for me either. Maybe someday I would go back to, last time I was in a Catholic church when my aunt passed, we had a service for her. But I love the church that we go to. I love worship music. I feel very comfortable there. And I think you kind of hit it on the head too, because I can remember I was a usher, or not an usher, what do you call it? Altar boy. And I just felt so uncomfortable all the time. What is this? But in all fairness too, I wasn't actually actively seeking God either.
Right.
So nothing against any organized religions or any specific churches. I think it's important to go where you feel peace, to go where you feel accepted, where you feel love, and start. The biggest thing is having that relationship, whatever that looks like individually for us, right?
I remember there was a time I had a buddy of mine who didn't have a car, and his brother was getting married, and it was going to be a couple hundred miles away or something in Minnesota. And I said, I'll go. Give me a seat at the wedding. I'll drive you, right? And so he's like, sure. I'm like, yeah. So I went up there, and big Catholic wedding, right? And I was totally comfortable, and it was a nice service and everything else. So now we got to go to the reception. Well, I don't know anybody, right? He's my buddy, but I'm comfortable. And I remember we were sitting at the table, and Father Tom, old 80-some-year-old Father Tom, comes out, and you could see everybody's butts just clench. They're like, oh, because he's coming, right? And Father Tom was like, and who are you, young man? And so then, and it was fascinating because I was comfortable, and I think he realized pretty quickly, like, I wasn't intimidated. I was like, let's go, man. I'm happy to hear your take on theology and everything else. Like, this is going to be a fun conversation. So, but yeah, I just remember him walking out, everybody doing one of those, and then, like, come on, Father Tom, let's go, But it's different when you're not comfortable. You'll run the other direction, right? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
So I had a potential client call the other night. I don't know if I told you about this, but it was very interesting. I was super excited. I've been placing cards in cities around the country. Cities like LA, Dallas, Salt Lake City, Silver City, Sedona, different places, right? So this guy calls me. I got 2 calls last week, one from Dallas, one from New Mexico. He says, hey, I've got some problems. And I said, okay, you want to elaborate on what's going on? He says, well, the way I was raised, I was the oldest. Once my sisters were born, I started getting a lot of anger issues. And we kind of got more in depth in it. And it turns out the guy doesn't drink or drug. He just saw my card. Maybe that means I need to switch my messaging on my card a little bit. But he's a 74-year-old gentleman. And basically, it was actually pretty scary. He said that he has, for a couple seconds, he'll have the thought of driving into incoming traffic.
Yeah.
And he wants to know why. And I said, well, I'm not a therapist. I highly recommend you see a therapist or somebody like that. Let me see if I can refer somebody to you. And then, so we talked at length for about 45 minutes, and he's an atheist. He claimed atheist, right? Okay, great. No problem. I mean, I also, the program I work with men on is a spiritual program. And no, I can't do that. Okay, fine. I wasn't going to work with him anyways. So, but he calls me the next morning, Sunday morning. Hey, I think I found out why I have this issue. Me and my wife talked because I said, have you told anybody else about wanting to hit somebody else's car head on? No, you're the first person. I was thinking maybe I should call the cops. I don't know what I need to do here. Mm-hmm. So the next morning he calls me, hey, I talked to my wife. We resolved it. I found out what it is. It's political rage. I said, okay. And I said, I gave him my perspective and my life experience, which is once I had a spiritual awakening and realized I'm a sovereign human being and I control this. I don't control the outside world. My life just got a lot better.
Yeah.
And he couldn't understand that. And then he started going off on the person who's in office. Yeah. I said, dude, I got to go. This is not what I signed up for. But he just wasn't even willing to hear. And I don't know why. I just felt like that kind of tied into the conversation, right? Like he would be so upset hearing something about religion, obviously, or politics, or anything that doesn't agree with him. And foundationally, I don't know if he really has a good reason for why. It's just your ego is so stuck in this, that, or the other. Yeah. Would you agree?
I do. And I something you were saying earlier that ties into that too is when I'm not grounded in a higher authority, power greater than myself, like you miss life, right? Because now I'm constantly trying to maneuver everything to line up in the way that I think it needs to go in order to feel safe. And that was a huge lesson that my sponsor was big on. He was like, here's the thing, man. He's like, you were afraid and you thought you were a cosmic piece of shit. I mean, that's really the way he described it, right? And I was like, fair enough, right? Like, and I didn't know I was afraid. And I had a grasp that the idea that I didn't measure up. Like, I kind of knew that. I didn't realize the depths of that. But the fear thing is what prevents me, because and so then I spend all this energy trying to get everything to line up out here. It just so I feel okay on the inside. And he, how he described it to me, he said, it's like playing whack-a-mole. He's like, you get like a million moles, right? And if you get them, and you ever feel like you had them all whacked? And I was like, yeah, there was probably some times where I felt like I had everything lined up. And he's like, and then what? He's like, now you're afraid one of them's freaking going to pop on you, right? Exactly. And he's like, you got fear coming and going. And he's like, and now you miss life. And now you're 45 years old and you haven't, you know what I mean? You were just, and I was like, oh my God, dude, right? So, yeah, when I run into that, I'm like, yep, it's a hard way to live.
It is. It's kind of like last week. Who was our guest? Was it Luis?
Yeah.
It's like what he said. He starts every day and he just says, God, I'm leaving it in your hands. Whatever happens, just help me help me go down the right path. But at this point, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to concern myself with it. I'm just going to go, and I'm going to leave it in your hands. And when he said that, I was like, man, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly how you need to be.
Well, and it's just so arrogant to think I know how things are supposed to go. I mean, you know what I mean? When I step back and how about this? When I'm spiritually fit and something presents that doesn't go the way that I thought it was going to go, and if I'm spiritually fit, the reaction is, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And when I'm not spiritually fit, now I deem it to be a problem, and I got to, isolate the problem, and I got to attack the problem.
Exactly.
Right? And so
It's funny you mentioned that because this is the message in church last week, and it was so spot on to what I've been talking about. Biblically, fear rewrites our identity. And so I kind of did some writing on it, and it really aligns with my message of my personal story and how I want to help people. When you're in a state of fear, nothing really good happens, and then you act out, you react instead of respond. I mean, we know the routine. So it's just really powerful to hear that, and know that, I have a choice. We all have a choice. But when we're unconscious, when we're, skating through life and not really grounded, as you say, because that is huge.
yeah.
This morning I actually took the time to meditate, which I don't always do. And, my brain will still, the hamster wheel kind of still spins, but, just that 15 to 20 minutes is somewhat helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. If it was pointed out to me that everybody's quote unquote working a program, right? And the way it was phrased to me was, he's like, and it appears to be, he said, it appears to me that your program is unconsciously ego-centered, right? Which means you're going to be afraid all the time. Exactly. And he's like, so now you're consciously get to practice being God-centered. That's what we need to do. And meditation is a great way to get lined up with that. Because when I don't do that, when I don't pause in the morning or throughout the day even, I will react. I just do. And I think I'm making choices, but they're coming out of the old drop-down box, right? They're still all out of the self-centered drop-down box, right? So, this is like, oh. And the opening, whether it's, Luis was talking about, mine is always, every prayer always starts with all is well. All is well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now I get to choose what principle I'm going to allow to guide me, right? And underneath that guiding principle, then have at it, and then get to see how life unfolds. But if I don't do that, I'm going to react and,
What's funny to me is my personal experience also has been my default was an unregulated nervous system, fight or flight all the time. I've said it before, it served me in homelessness. It served me in car sales, heck, because I wanted to go, sell. But now in this position, if I really want to serve and help people, which I do, I know I have to be regulated. But my default was so strong that even though it was a warm, shitty blanket, it was still a warm, shitty blanket.
Well, and it was practice.
It was familiar.
Yep.
Right? So the unfamiliar is living in gratitude, living in joy, living in understanding things are going to work out for our best. We just don't know what that is.
We don't. And then I get caught up in that, right? When I work with new guys, that's one of the things. I'm like, here's the thing. We're going to go through this process, call them steps, whatever you want to say. And it's going to show you what your real problem is, right? And that's going to be the big awakening that was for me initially. Like, I didn't know I was self-centered. I didn't know that I had made life so damn difficult because I was grounded in my ego or whatever you want to say, right? And then when that got pointed out, I was like, oh, shit, well, now what? Well, now we got to practice walking in a different direction.
Yep.
Right? And that takes practice. I mean, when you got decades of fight or flight, that's just still the default, right?
That's the ego. I mean, you're operating in the shadows. So it's just releasing yourself from it and trying to align yourself with your higher vibrating self by, like you said, you've got to real simply just love, have gratitude, forgive, and just keep it simple like that.
There's so much power in just like knowing things are going to work out.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I mean, you could read you listen to tons of stories about near-death experiences and people, you know, having these major issues and then going to the other side and seeing, wow, there's so much more to this. And after this, you know, what am I doing? Why am I worried about, you know, why am I living this life the way I have? Why am I making these choices? You know, there's so much more to it. Just be gracious, you know, allow yourself to love and forgive, and, you know, and just don't worry about it. Just take it out of your hands.
And I think from the outside looking in, you know, people that are not spiritual people or people that are anti-religion or atheists or whatever you want to call them, maybe there's an idea, because maybe this is probably an idea that I had at one point. If you have a spiritual awakening, if you're supposedly this guru or whatever, like your life instantly changes and you never have a problem again. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
You know, part of the spiritual awakening for me was understanding that the material world, the 3D world, wasn't really reality. It was more of a fourth dimensional reality, which I absolutely love, you know, because it shows up in the way I treat people, the way I show up for myself, the way I conversate with people, the way I respect and treat people, all that stuff.
One of the interesting things for me lately is I've been embracing my humanity, in the sense that I'm grateful for all of it, that I get to experience. Like, yes, if I want to find peace and freedom, I need to consciously practice being in the fourth dimension. But the reality is, I'm still out here, my feet are walking around in society, and I get to experience all the highs and lows and everything else that goes along with it. And how awesome is that? Like, I literally did nothing to get on this planet, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's all a gift, which means it's all a gift. The good and the bad, and or whatever I want to label it, right? Which, that was another thing that was pointed out to me, is like, you always want to label things high or low, and then you want to put a value on it, and 1 to 10, and everything's bad, and it's at 37. You know what I mean? And so, and I was like, yeah, fair enough. Like, but now I'm enjoying all of it, way more so. You know, I don't want to be irritated, but I'm also going, you know what? That's just telling me that I'm grounded in me again. There's a lot of Mike going on, you know? Right? Okay, thanks, I guess, right? You know?
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, guys.
What matters most to you? Protecting your family, your home, your car, or planning for the future? State Farm makes it simple to protect what matters most. Agent Michael J. Bader is here in your community to guide you through every step, making sure you get the protection you need without the hassle. Whether it's auto, home, life, or business insurance, Michael J. Bader can help you find the right plan today. Call 520-878-0098 or email michael@baderagency.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
All right, guys, welcome back to Sobriety, Spirituality, and Sales. For those of you that are just checking in with us, we've got our great guest, Mike, here with us. Mike Cylkowski, businessman here in Tucson. He's in a sales role with a company that does media sales for networks.
Yep.
Local networks.
Television, yeah.
Okay. And then Mike Bader, the host of the show. Thank you so much for riding with me here.
You bet, brother. Thank you, man.
Check out Mike's website, shoot him an email. Give him a phone call if you need a quote on your insurance. I actually switched to him, and he saved me. I think I just got a $1,600 check back in the mail. So
I'll even give you a shout out. You've been my guy since I got to town. I didn't even know it.
yeah,
Same here. Thank you. I've got a great team, man.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. I've got some fantastic ladies that just love doing what they do, and we all have a lot of fun doing it together. So
I'm curious on, since you had a spiritual awakening, like the stuff that you learned in sales, how is that? Are you still applying all of those things, or is
I think what I found out years ago is when I was so focused on the numbers and I was so focused on the weekly and monthly ranks, and I made it about that, and I felt like I was always chasing. And there's always somebody else that gets above you, and you have that anxiety, and you're like, I just want to be number one all year long, this and that. And what I realized, I'd say probably 2010, 2011, I just got burnt out with it. And so mainly, it's about the client, and it's doing the right thing for the client. And it's amazing when I stopped caring about the rankings and all the crap that went with it and just made it about what I'm supposed to make it about, taking care of people. The business just blew up after that, because you're getting the referrals, you're getting, and it has a lot more meaning. And that's basically what it's about for us is, we like working with referrals because they're friends of friends. We don't buy the leads. But it was just that simple switch that we made, or that I made. And I said, you know what? This is ridiculous. And then we just started we did really well. And we still do. We still do well.
There's a great Zig Ziglar quote that basically, says that, if you really want to help people, that's how you'll end up having the success. And I'm just paraphrasing, but, for me, the spiritual aspect of business, because I believe it is spiritual, is when I knew in sales when I was at my most spiritual is when I was crushing it, because I wasn't in resentment, I wasn't in fear, I wasn't in jealousy, I wasn't looking at the other salespeople and looking what they were doing. I was focused on helping my customer. And you know what? If I lost a deal, if a customer zagged instead of zigged and they got them and I didn't, I had a choice. And just like we have a choice to drink or not to drink, I had a choice that could affect my day and quote unquote be taken off the market. That's kind of the terminology in car business. Maybe it's across the board, or my month, right? Or as long as I let it. Or I could just say, you know what, that wasn't meant for me and move on to the next one. And I think for a lot of salespeople, it's hard for them to do that, especially the uber competitive ones. I was a top salesperson. There was a couple guys that did better than me. But I'll tell you this, I always took my day off. I always went home when I was supposed to. I didn't work extra hours. Not because I wasn't a company guy, because I valued my free time. And I understand that my sobriety is more important than anything else. And it seemed to work for me. So
there was So the November of 2019, we left the Twin Cities and went to Des Moines, Iowa. And my ex was a top producing realtor. So it just seemed like it made sense if she was going to get out of the business, because otherwise the phone just always rang, and it still rings, I think, from Minnesota. But we still had family in the upper Midwest, so we thought Des Moines makes sense, right? So we go to Des Moines. And then COVID hits, and now there's me, and at the time I had a 1-year-old, and so the three of us are staring at each other. We don't know anybody in Des Moines, whatever, right? And we had a Grand Cherokee, and I'm in the dealership, and so I'm like, I need to get out of the damn house. And so I start BSing with the GM. So he's like, you want to sell cars? I'm like, yeah, let me come sell cars. So I sold cars for a year.
Okay.
I sold Jeeps for 6 months, and then I went over to Kia.
Okay.
Anyways, and I was the top guy out of the gate, and it was interesting because I was the old dude, right? Mm-hmm. And a bunch of the kids. And to their credit, a couple of them were like, why are you selling so much? And I said, do you want to really know the secret? I go, and this is where, when I was asking the question earlier, because everything shifted radically, where I was like, none of this is about me, dude.
Exactly.
Like, it's literally, like, when you talk to somebody, I go, just give a shit about them. Like, that's all you're doing.
That's all you got to do.
Just do the best you possibly can to try to help them get the best deal, they help them. And you would see the kids just did not understand because they wanted a tick or, a technique or something. And I'm like, there's no technique. I go, just
closing statement.
Just be there, right? And be present.
Show them you care.
Give them, yes, everything you do, right? And that was a lot of fun. And cars was super fun until it wasn't. And then I was like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah, I think what I really liked about it, it's fast paced.
Yeah.
I like the sale on the spot type of deal because in college I sold educational books door to door.
Yeah.
I don't like these 3-month processes with solar and certain other industries. You're developing the relationship. Not everybody's going to sign up right away. I get that. But there was just something to it because I would gain momentum if I sold one.
Yeah.
There was multiple times where I was 2 cars in halfway through the month and I'd still hit 12, 15 cars for the month because it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I knew despite the challenges leading up to that point, I could still turn it on at any point and God was still in control. And it was foundational for me, right? Like other guys would freak out halfway through the month and it would let them affect their last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we all have choice.
Yeah.
And your family's waiting for you at home. They want they want to put food on the table and get the paycheck. And, for you to just mentally check out, it's not fair to anybody.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that, I did MCI WorldCom in college. Converting phone lines, and you nailed it. You're one of the young guys, and you're rocking and rolling. You're good. You've got the spiel down, and then middle of the month you hit a cold streak, and it just changes everything. Because you're not focused on the right thing. You're focused on you.
Well, and then you're a victim because now it's not me, it's circumstance and all these other.
Never me.
Yeah.
No, never me.
And then all the other guys will co-sign your bullshit over there by the water cooler that they're having the same situation happen to them, right?
But you're looking at the old dude there that just gets it done
He just grinds
every
it out.
day, and you're like, what are you doing, man? I don't get it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. It's that easy. You just make it about them.
I mean, in the door-to-door world, and I always go back to that because that was foundational for me in sales. From one door to the next, I would coach myself. Okay, what went right? What didn't go right? How could I improve? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, there was days where I knocked on 50 doors and I got my ass handed to me. And those were character building days. And those were necessary days because it taught me something incredible, which was resiliency. Keep going. Doesn't matter what people tell you. Just keep going. Keep a good attitude, control the controllables, right? Because that's all in real estate, in what you do now on advertising. If somebody comes to you and wants to get out of a deal, if somebody, if you visit somebody, knock on someone's door, it's a referral, whatever it is, and let's say they're having a bad day and they just let that affect you, well, that's your choice, really. I mean, you control whether that happens or not, right?
Yeah.
And then you take that energy to the next appointment.
Yeah.
Or don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's door to door. When we were first helping my ex with her business, there was an adjacent neighborhood, and I knew the guy that kind of had owned that turf, and I didn't really care for him, right? So, and so I'd always kept an eye on it, but I wasn't selling; I was running the brokerages, and then we started dating, and she's like, I think I want to get into real estate. I'm like, well, we can go dominate this turf over here. I go, but we have to go knock on doors, and we got to do all the things, right? She's like, all right, let's do it. And I remember the first deal we got was some old guy, and I knocked on, and all I would say was like, hey, when's the last time you thought about selling your house? And the old dude was standing at the door, and he's like, well, as a matter of fact, I'm actually thinking about it right now. And I was like, what's a good thing I showed up? And then he says, well, he's like, well, I'll be the judge of that. And I go, well, I'm going to stop you. Because I said, here's the deal. I go, you don't want to deal with me. You want to deal with the pretty girl. And he's like, I probably do. And I go, yeah, I bet you do. Right? So I gave him my wife's card. And I said, she'll come back. Well, that ended up, and then she ended up doing both sides of the transaction. And then that ended up being a springboard where that woman, I thought, great, we're going to make 150, whatever, right?
Sure.
Just get out of the house and do well. And she was a beast.
She took it over.
She just dominated that whole turn. And so literally within a year, she was, if you walked in that neighborhood, people knew her name, right? Mm-hmm. But it started because we knock on doors, and it was always a funny conversation. People would be like, what? And then they were older people. It was an older neighborhood. So and I remember some of the conversations, I could always tell it was going well when somebody would step out. And they would go, who you need to talk to is that guy. Yeah. He's 112, right? Or whatever. They'd tell me some story. And I was like, okay, that's great. Thank you.
They're helping you prospect.
Yep, right. Yeah. So it was fun. I love door knocking.
It was funny. Yeah, so when I knocked doors, I was selling educational books. And I can tell you right now, if you go up to somebody and say, hey, I'm looking for the kids in the neighborhood, that doesn't go too well, right? So it's very strategic. It was very strategic on how, because if I go up to a house and it's a retired couple where they don't have kids, okay, great. I was just wondering if you could help me out. We're looking for families that have children. Obviously, you see play sets in the yard. That's kind of a dead giveaway. But, man, it was incredible how we learned how to manage ourselves, and you could build a team and manage those people as well. So it was such a great experience. And the hardest sale was when we would show up. So I showed up in Austin, Minnesota. I had to find housing for us that summer.
Hormel. That's what Hormel.
Yeah, the Spam Festival was a week long there. Yeah, that was my territory, Mower County. And, all these farmers with these sausage fingers shaking my hand, and they work incredibly hard for their families. But yeah, I had to knock on somebody's door. Hey, can we live with you this summer? I'm 22 years old. We want to tell our parents we're safe and this and that. That was a tough sale.
Yeah.
I don't know you from Adam.
Yeah.
So incredible stuff.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love sales. But the thing you talked about zig, and I think the quote is, right, if you want anything in life, you're just helping up other people get what they want.
Yeah.
You can get
If
whatever
you want everything you want in the
Yeah.
world, yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, I devoured all that stuff, like all the books, and it was Automobile University, we would call it, because I would listen to Brian Tracy. I mean, everybody,
Yeah.
right? That's all we did all day long. And then after having the major shift and waking up, I was like, and not that I didn't learn some things. I'm not saying I didn't, but now if I'm going to go back, and I'm like, no, how about you grab some spiritual literature and let's get grounded, because that'll take care of everything else. It literally does, you know. If I'm okay with me, and if I'm here for the right reasons, and I'm just trying to be helpful, you know, you'll figure it out.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fun.
So what is your business model set up with now? How do you have the success that you have now? And I'm sure you said you're working, what, 30, 40 hours a week then?
Yeah,
Okay.
a little bit more. Yeah, I never wanted to work full time again, but I'm probably closer to 30, 35 hours a week right
Okay.
now. So that was interesting because I obviously marketing background and grassroots and real estate and, you know, a lot of, you know, same in your thing, right? But I'd never done mass media before. So when my buddy had said, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, what is it? And so Tegna owns like the NBC station up in Phoenix, and they have Fox and CW here locally, and then any streaming channels, right? So Hulu or Discovery or whatever. So if anybody wants to advertise on TV in some way, shape, or form, I can help you do it.
Right.
So, but here I am, and I don't know anybody in town. And I was thinking, boy, this would be easy back in Minnesota. Like I knew everybody, right? Like I just knew everybody. And so I was like, well, what do I do? And I was like, well, and so then I just started driving around town, and I'm like, I bet they would be good to advertise. It's literally how I started. And then when I would door knock and I would pop in on businesses, and I was like, hey, what do you do for marketing? Like literally, you know, and they'd be like, we've done this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, how's it going? And I'm like, and some guys would say we're killing it. I'm like, great. You don't need me, you know, but other guys will, you know, and then it became, and that was a lesson early on when the sale was like, you know, I'm supposed to know more about my product than my potential prospect, right? So I was like, I probably should know what I offer, you know, and I was like, oh, and then it became, what we really do? And all I really do is offer exposure. That's literally in the platform that I offer it, right? Like if you got a great, compelling message, that's great, but at the same time, consistency over time, time on task over time, just get your name out there and that works, right? So, and that's how I built, so then I door knocked everybody. Like I just started popping in at businesses, and I learned, because then the biggest challenge for me, because you don't get to say anymore that you're not tech savvy, but you know, I mean, at some point you got to just figure out stuff, right? Well, I didn't know all the software, you had to enter stuff and whatever. And I was like, well, I'm never going to learn how to do any of this unless I get a deal, right? So that's literally what my motivation was. I was like, well, I have to go sell something, and then I can figure out how to actually enter it, right? And so that's how it started. And now, and it changed pretty fast. And I could keep in mind, my head really wasn't in the game. And I remember apologizing to the station manager. I was like, dude, I think I must think pretty highly of myself, but I go, you know, normally I'm a pretty good sales guy, and I go, I'm probably running at like 8% capacity because I'm like the divorce, like all the stuff, right? Yeah. And he's like, well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. You're doing great. Right? So, and then it probably about a year and a half, where it kind of shifted, where then I started getting a lot of referrals, and people were like, and those are my favorite calls, when somebody just says, hey, just call Mike. He will tell you yes or no. There's a lot of people I just say, you know, this doesn't make sense for you, right? You know, and then it becomes, and I do have a pretty varied background, so I can also go, you know what? I think honestly you'd be better served to go do a street fair or whatever, right? You know, if you're going to spend some money, do that, right? So, and that's kind of how I started. But I just was like, I got to go talk to people, and then my clients or prospects were the ones that really, they would ask a question and I wouldn't know the answer. You know, I was like, that's a really good question. You know,
I'll get back with you then.
Right, you know, I'll get back to you, but yeah, thank you. Right? And then that would help me for the next appointment. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah, some of that, I mean, sales is still sales. It's still numbers, and you got to talk to people and,
Yeah.
you know, get better at it. But,
Yeah. We're coming in with the service-minded attitude and all that good stuff.
yeah. Yeah. So
Know your product.
And eventually know your product.
Make it easy on yourself.
All right. So for somebody who is in business, for somebody who has all the shiny things, for somebody who is tired of the charade, as you said, who wants to take the mask off, you know, what advice would you have for somebody in business out there that knows they have a problem, that, you know, the alcohol's running their life and they want to find out who they are without it?
Oof. You know, I think one of the biggest questions that we don't ever ask or think to ask ourselves is, what am I really looking for? And so if somebody's got any sort of discontentment, I think that's where you need to really, if you can get to that spot honestly, quickly, where you can ask yourself, what is it I really, 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 really want? And I think the answer for everybody, truthfully, is I want a sense of peace. I want to feel free. And then from there, I think that can really be the foundation to like, okay, what's that really going to look? What are the steps that I need to take? Alcohol is having a big impact on my life. Fair enough. I've been leaning on this because I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. That's why I'm leaning, you know, it's not really a problem. It's actually what I deem to be an answer, right? You know, or the girls or whatever it is you're chasing, right? But if you can, I think that to me, if you can get to that spot, that's the biggest question you can ask internally is like, you know what, I just want to be okay. Like, and all the things that I'm doing apparently aren't producing the desired result. And so,
Except in all other areas of their life, right? Because
yeah, but
you can justify and rationalize
for sure
the paper, you know.
Yeah, I'll
looking
keep
good at,
going,
you know.
because I'm hitting the metrics. I got the houses, I got the boats, I got the things.
Yeah.
You know, but the reality is,
At some point, your soul kind of, you know, you're out of alignment.
you're out of alignment. And so what is it you're really shooting for? And if all that stuff's not really producing it, then okay, maybe we need to have a major upheaval and see what we're really grounded in. I think that's the essence of what we try to tell people in meetings, right? At the end of the day, like, you don't even know what you're shooting for, right? Like, you thought you found an answer in this bottle or whatever, and now that's not working. Now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And you're still stuck with you.
Right. At
So
the
now,
end of the day.
now what are we going to do? Right.
Yeah.
So that would be, I try to cut to the chase as quick as I can. And most people aren't interested in that. Most people want the shiny bullet, you know, if I can just get her back. If I can just sleep in the big bed. That's one of the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just want to get back in the bedroom. Right. You know, okay, well, all right.
Yeah, I've had a couple of potential clients that did not want to move forward because they got their girlfriend back. Or, you know, there was a problem that presented itself and then it got reversed or it got, you know, fixed. And that's okay. I mean, hopefully one day they'll come to that realization, and I'm not here to push it on anybody. It's just that I'm here to help when people are desperate enough and want the help. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a hard one, man. When especially alcohol, when you deem that to be the answer, you don't even know that that's what you've considered to be the answer, right? Like, that's a hard thing to see. Like, you can't see the forest for the trees. But if you're starting to question it, then you really got to ask yourself, okay, what problem am I trying to solve with going to the bar every night or whatever it might be, right? Because I'm not comfortable in my own skin. That's really what I'm doing.
yeah, I love that. I love that.
You know?
That was definitely the case for me as well. I think growing up, I just always felt different, you know.
Yeah.
Felt off a little bit. So, well, man, it's been a great show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
you guys. Absolutely.
You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay out of the rain.
Enjoy the weather.
Enjoy
Yes.
the weather.
Yeah.
How can they get a hold of you?
Get in the rain. So my website is mikecurrycoaching.com. If you're a business owner and you know alcohol is running your life and you want to find out who you are without it, please reach out to me. Let's schedule a call. Let's just have an honest conversation about, you know, what that could look like in your life. So again, and Mike, phone number.
520-878-0098.
And how do they get a hold of you, Mike?
480-766-1060.